Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your host, Noor Kyle,
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
and we want to thank you for joining us. We have quite a full house this evening, which is amazing, and that means you get to hang out not just with us, but with a lot of our favorite people. Always love that. So, we have, as Mushtaq promised, we have a weird one as far as topics go this evening, but it should be short and sweet and pretty interesting at the same time. So
Mhm.
without further ado, YouTube spiel, of course. Whether you're here watching on YouTube, if you're here watching on YouTube, one of the ways that you could help us out and make sure that we keep this channel going is to subscribe to our channel, of course. Uh, Let us know you enjoyed this video by giving it a thumbs up. Leave a comment. You can chat with us. You can leave a message for us there, or you can respond to other people's comments, of course. Be nice. And as always, and as many people have been doing lately, giving donations. Donations, large or small, all are welcome. All help us keep this work going because, as many of you who have been around here for a while know, this is our livelihood. This is what we are committed to, and that is helping people wake up, sharing information in a way that does not force us to hide it behind paywalls. We try to give you as much as we can to the extent that we can. And the only thing that really limits us is our energy and our capacity to get things done in a way that allows us to keep food on the table while sharing our knowledge and passion with you every single week. So, without further ado, you can check out our video information where you'll find a bunch of links towards those ends. You got our donation link. You got a link where you can sign up for one-on-ones or two-on-ones with us, as the case may be, if you have interest in learning from us in a more private setting over Zoom, where we focus on you and your journey. And of course, you can join us on Facebook and you can join our email list, which I continue to recommend. In either of those ways, you'll be able to get a link that will allow you to join us live, like all of these cool people here this evening. So, anything I've left out, Mushtaq?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah, I've mentioned all the important things, and there are other odds and ends you'll find in the description. If you want a t-shirt, feel free to check that out. But without further ado, let's get to our weird topic this evening. So, someone asked Mushtaq a question about this weird Gurdjieffian concept about being food for the moon. What is that? What the hell does that even mean? So, in response to that very good question, as it is one of those things from the Gurdjieff corpus that deserves a little bit of unpacking. That's why this title is called. What is the title of this video, Mushtaq? We just had it.
It is tired of being food for the moon.
Yes. Yes. We are going to tell you what it means to be food for the moon and tell you how to stop being food for the moon. Once you know what it is, you can take action to take charge and, make sure that you're putting your energy towards things that really matter to you. So, Mushtaq, dive in.
Well, to understand this, you have to look at three aspects of Gurdjieff's teachings. Um, the first of which is the idea of reciprocal maintenance. And that's basically every part of the universe does something to support the rest of the universe. And um, Gurdjieff talked about it at the level of energy. It's like you're going to give energy to the universe, to a specific part of the universe in a specific way, whether you like it or not. It is an obligation from your existence. Now, he says that there are two ways to do this. The easier and more common way is to die. And at death, a certain amount of energy is released for the reciprocal maintenance of the universe. This is interesting because, according to his philosophy, every living creature has a part in this.
Well, it's very food chain.
Yeah, it's very food chain
Mhm.
like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
circle of life.
and that means that say passenger pigeons have
Mhm.
uh, their part to play in the reciprocal maintenance of the universe. But wait, passenger pigeons are extinct,
Mm.
and they're extinct because humans wiped them out.
Oh.
And according to Gurdjieff's thought, and I like this
Mhm.
in a certain sense, um, if you wipe out a species that has its part to play, then some of your species has to take on the obligation of that species. So a certain number of people uh, will be living the energy of a passenger pigeon, which is a weird thought. I don't know if any of this is true, by the way. I personally take it as metaphor to a certain extent, to a large certain extent. Um,
But as a metaphor, it has meaningfulness in it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, events will arrange themselves to uh, allow the universe to harvest what it needs, including humans. Um, Plagues are one way that it does it. You know, you get a disease running rampant across the world, and a bunch of people die, and that energy goes to the reciprocal maintenance of the universe, according to the prevailing thought. And I have to say, I am simplifying this as much as possible. I'm not going to use any of the weird words that Gurdjieff made up. I'm just going to give it to you as plainly as I can. Another way that the universe harvests humans is war. Think about that for a second. How many wars have actually made sense? As far as I can tell, pretty much none of them. And when it comes right down to it, it may in fact just be the universe's way of harvesting enough human energy for the reciprocal maintenance thing. So we have that, and I don't want to go too deeply into that. We also have the idea of Gurdjieff's ray of creation, which we can relate to a little bit more because he probably took major parts of this from Sufism. If you overlay the levels of the nafs and things like that on it, they all fit nicely, but we don't need to go into that either. What we do know is that from the top down, there is energy being given to that which is beneath whatever level. So you have the sun absolute, and it's giving energy to everything below it. And it goes down all of these things. And, here we are at level 48. Uh,
Versus
and
you.
level 48 is considered uh, the level of the earth. And below us is one other thing, which is level 96. And that's called the level of the moon. And this tells us that, what would you say? We feed, according to this model, that which is lower than us. And that's the moon. So you got the sun, you got all the planets, you got the solar system, all of this kind of stuff coming down. And each one, the number of restraints upon being gets denser. So we start off at 3. Well, we start off at 1, or we start off at 0, depending on where you want to start. So you have 1, then 1 becomes 3, not 2. And this is where we get the 3 forces, the affirming, denying, and reconciling forces. As that steps down to the next level, you get the 6 processes. And then goes to 12, 24, 48. Human beings are supposed to live at 48, which is the level of Earth. Am I making enough sense? I don't think I've had enough coffee.
I think for the people who follow Gurdjieff and stuff, of course, this stuff makes
Yeah.
pretty close sense because they've read about it previously. And hmm, I would say, at the top we have the absolute, and then as we go down and down and down, things get more and more obfuscated, complicated.
The word we're looking for is sedimented.
Yes, sedimented, meaning there's a lot more constraints on that level of reality. So if the numbers seem like a lot of weirdness, those are the things that you need to keep in mind. As you go down these levels of reality, you are ending up with more and more sedimentation, more constraints on how reality can present itself.
Below us, at the level of the moon, we have the place of maximum sedimentation. Now, what does that mean? Maximum sedimentation.
Now, this is something we've been talking about recently. So,
Yeah.
who remembers who might like to be brave enough to offer? James says minimum
You cannot
awareness.
wake up.
Yeah.
We can wake up.
Can't wake up most of the time, no. Think about getting old. This is not aging, but getting old. When you get old, your world becomes more and more restricted. You can't move in the ways that you did when you were younger. And everything comes in on you. Look at, I mean, it's weird sometimes when I see people who are younger than me using walkers, uh, and barely able to walk. But that's an example of the sedimentation of aging.
It's like your range of motion is constrained. That includes like your ranges of expression.
Yes,
That's a great way to put it. Yes, I like that. Ian
You're
has a thought.
thinking too. You're thinking too. You cannot change. You become very.
yeah, that's the sedimented part. You become like
Yeah.
rock.
Yep.
So, Ian, what do you think? All the
Well,
old people are jumping up.
I was just going to say that the way I remember Gurdjieff putting it is that the numbers represent orders of laws. So the number
Yes.
of laws you live under. So 48 is sort of the normal level of laws for a human being, and then 96 is sort of where you're just under too many constraints.
Yeah, pretty much.
Very difficult.
Yeah. I try and avoid the term laws just because that has so many connotations to people. And there is no psychic cops that are going to come and give you a ticket if you disobey one of the laws. So
It's not that kind. It's like
it's more like gravity.
exactly. That's
Yeah,
like law of gravity. Yeah.
yeah. I was going to say, I think that he meant natural laws of existence.
Yep. Thank you, Ewan. Todd, what are your thoughts before we move on?
I recently had actually yesterday, had an experience of vastly increasing sedimentation. There was somebody I had been friends with a while, and I had some art that she'd done, some art that her late father had done, and went to return it to her. And the only way that she could react was the only way she had of interacting was um, her highly programmed, straight out of a certain school of propaganda, um, talking points,
Mm.
and got very hostile when anything went outside those or denied those. And I thought, my gosh, this person is younger than I am, and her brain has completely ossified. So it's just, we'd been talking about it the week before, and I got a chance to see it, and I was unable to relate to her on any kind of human level after that, which was kind of sad.
That is sad. Thanks for sharing that experience, though, Todd.
But it was a great example of
Yeah,
sedimentation.
exactly. Yeah, I'm just sorry that it's the case. Yep. Shrug indeed.
Chris, did you raise your
Yes.
hand?
Chris is trying to raise his hand, but he's got his
Yeah,
hands
he's
full.
driving. So
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to get a check on my thinking here because I've reflected on what we've talked about regarding Pascal's triangle, Rushak, and the
I
Tetractylon.
was thinking of Pascal's triangle the other day.
Yep.
Yeah, synchronicities.
And I wonder if this applies or not, which is that like as I've thought about the constraints on being, I've considered that like almost like the difficulty of my true will expressing itself increases, or like the probability of my true will being expressed is less in my favor the further we go down. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in one very real sense, when you get at the level of the moon, you are entirely mechanical. And you have fundamentally no capability of thought in the higher sense. You will emote your thoughts.
To the point where it's almost dependent on some kind of happening of grace that you have a chance to get out of that kind of sedimentation, huh?
Yeah.
So,
So then we get to the third and weirdest part of this, which is the idea of humankind are food for the moon, which is to say that our energy goes to the moon, and it goes to the moon, according to Gurdjieff, who probably said this with a straight face, to help the moon evolve. His idea was that the moon is going to get warmer, and it's going to develop an atmosphere, and it's going to develop life, and all of this kind of stuff, and our energy is feeding that. Now, the only thing we can do with that is take it as metaphor, because it is demonstrably not doing that. It's not even like, could it do that? But it isn't doing that. The science is in on this. The moon is not warming. It is not developing an atmosphere.
And in Beelzebub's Tales, he also says that the sun is cold.
Yeah. So you got to take this stuff as metaphor. The way I take it, and you don't have to do this, but it works for me, is the energy that we lose through sedimentation goes to creating greater sedimentation. When you were a kid, did you ever make rock candy? Anybody here?
Okay, Todd has.
Yeah. So to make rock candy, the
Frank
first thing
has.
you do is you make a super saturated solution of sugar water. And then you take a string, and you can either rub some sugar on the string or just stick it in the water.
Yeah, string or some kind of wooden stick or plastic stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was string. And then, and it was a particular kind of string, which is the string that is used to sew shut flour sacks. Don't ask me why. Well, I know why. It's because you usually had a lot of that around. And you put that in the water and you wait. And over time, the water evaporates and the string begins to create a crystalline structure that grows over time into a piece of rock candy that you can then pull out of the water and eat. I think this is a bit like that. We are crystallizing our own consciousness by supersaturating something, some field or something, um, with our somnambulism, with the energy that we waste in our mechanical behavior. And again, this is metaphor. I can't figure out a way to test this at all. So it's metaphor. Now, there's one interesting thing about this. As I said before, there's two ways that humans can um, act to participate in the reciprocal maintenance of the universe. And the first one is by dying. You know what the second one is? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Does not involve puppies.
By thinking negative?
By what?
Thinking negative?
No. James, tell us.
Well, by doing the work on yourself and waking up, you generate more energy.
Yes. Give the man a cigar. Don't smoke it.
Sorry, I thought we were still on negative, but that was the positive one. James, you win. Ah.
We know you know. It's all good.
So, when you participate in the process of awakening, you also release energy, but you operate at a much higher energy state yourself. And the consequences of this is that the universe likes it. And liking it, it will want to keep you around. It's like we have a tree in the front yard, and it's an apricot tree. And it produces wonderful apricots. They're very delicious, organic, sun ripened. And every year we pick them and we eat them. We are not going to cut that tree down for firewood because it produces something more valuable than its death can provide. So it's a little perk that waking up will have a tendency to encourage the universe to preserve you in so much as it can. Yes, Cherie.
My question is that in trying to stay awake, I had the same experience that Todd spoke of at the beginning, and it's with family, just being with family and noticing how stuck they are. And I was trying to have a conversation, but what I really felt was I was being sucked into their world and their thinking, that the feeling of that when you're with so many people who are so stuck, it's so tiring. And so you're trying to hold yourself and to keep awake, but you think, wow, I can't seem to find any common place in the conversation because we are thinking so differently, and you can't even give reason or justify or anything. You just have to go, really? Really? So,
Yeah.
my question is, how do we hold ourselves for, because I can feel my vitality being sucked out and I feel worn out being with my family. So how do we actually conserve that?
Yeah. Family is the biggest hurdle in this because you have an entire lifetime of anchors to sleep set up in a family. And the only way I know of, there are two ways at least. One is avoid your family entirely for the rest of your life. This tends to be impractical. So the other way is to carefully remove the anchors that your family has on you so that they can't trigger you. And that's part of the work. Part of the work is to make yourself immune to the anchored states that your family has developed over a lifetime.
Which is tough.
It is.
There's
It's way
very
easier to
little.
just never talk to them again. But as I said, that's somewhat impractical.
Yes, yes.
And
There's
I don't
very little
recommend
that
it.
is easy about that.
No, it is definitely quite challenging. So I do keep my contact to the barest minimum to keep peace. And, I just look after my mum, but with my siblings, I'm thinking, wow, how did we come out of the same family? How did some people want to be really beholden to their right-wing evangelical beliefs, which is like blows my mind. And I just thought, oh, how can I be a fully awake human and be compassionate and loving and responsive and all those things? And I find that's hard. That's really, really hard because they don't feel that what I'm doing is worthy of acknowledgement and I'm going to go to hell.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm like, oh my God. So that's, you think you want to rail at it, but you can't. And it's hard to watch the people that you love because you wish you could help them wake up. That's probably one of my biggest heart ache. You think, oh my God, how can you stay there? You know, how can you think like that? How can you think of that person as other? You know, we've been through the same fight, you know, of trying to be accepted, and now you're doing the same thing. And I'm thinking that doesn't make it right.
Yeah,
It doesn't right. And I just, I guess that's the heartache.
it is. And that's what deepens the compassion even further. If it's real compassion, that ability to kind of step back from the, oh, why can't you just do this? To, wow, I'm gonna sit with this pain that I feel and this sense of loss and longing for that being on the same page together, right? That for whatever reason is just not proving itself possible or accessible.
Mm.
Yeah, and the closer you are to the people, the harder it is.
Yeah,
This is Mother's Day, and
right? It's a
I'm
big day for that. Yeah.
yeah, I can remember the day that I realized that my own mother, who was an absolutely wonderful person, and for her whole life did the best for her kids, have no bad thing to say about her, but life was tough for us, and the difficulty of it drove her over the years into more and more mechanical fixation.
Hmm.
And there was a point where I realized she's entirely locked in that. She cannot get loose from it. And there's nothing that I can say that can get her loose. And all I can do is be as kind to her as I possibly can and reassure her that she did a great job of making sure that I lived long enough to reach adulthood,
Hmm.
but she was never going to wake up.
Yeah.
And furthermore, she was so mechanical. And this is a thing that you need to know. The more mechanical a person is, the more predictable they are. So with her, I always knew what she was going to say before she said it, just by looking at what would stimulate her to say something. And this is true for way too many people.
Yeah.
Do not lose novelty. And that's what the sedimentation of consciousness is the loss of novelty, the loss of surprise, the loss of being able to experience the new, the unique, the unusual, and make a space for it.
Yep. So we have some thoughts in the chat.
Yeah.
Cherie RM wants to let you know that she resonates with what you were sharing. And Alka said that she had a similar question at one time from Stock, and she loved it when you said, Mushtaq, that it's when you think you have very important things to say, the reality is that you don't. This was for me, as I am always silly. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not our place to say things to people, or, we say them once, maybe twice, and then we have to let go and love them regardless. Because, of course, we have our own sedimentation. So it, again, is one of those situations where we can't just be condescending about it. Like, why can't you be enlightened like me? Gotta be careful about that at all times. And in that line of thinking, RM also says incompatibility can teach good lessons. Yeah, I mean, how can we love and hold compassion even in the face of some real incompatibilities in terms of ways of thinking and moving through the world? It is possible, but it's very hard, and it's especially hard in proximity.
Frank has something to say.
Yes.
Yeah, my experience is exact opposite. I every time I'm with my family and it's after 32 years, I was literally put into the family and I don't have my personal family. So it's like my brother's family now and my mom that I'm reconnecting after 32 years by being maximum I used to connect with them for 15 days a year.
Mm.
It's really interesting. Initially, they appeared to be not awake and just close-minded people, more always worried about their looks and everything. But the more awake or woke, whatever you want to call it, I became, the more I started listening. And luckily for me, both Mustaq and you were here also, and you also showed me some things like, hey, wake up when you're listening. I realized they're the best teachers, actually. I really don't have anything important to tell them. Just become awake, and somehow it will register to them by your behavior, by the way you're looking at things, by you not making things much bigger than they are.
Yeah.
And if something is bothering you or emotional, then just listen to your emotions and you will see it's your own drama and you will thank them for it. So mine is like, I am so thankful to be literally put in this situation. Like yesterday at Mother's Day, everybody was here and they were literally ganging up against teasing me. And then I started observing myself and I realized, oh, I'm getting worked up. They're just being silly. And I started being silly with them, and that diffused the entire environment. So I'm very thankful that my family, I feel they're more awake, just not in my style. And I'm very thankful to them. So.
Now, there is one thing that you have to realize. If you're in a situation with a group like your family, almost everything that goes on is an invitation for you to participate in the patterns of mechanical behavior that your family has created to be comfortable. And if you don't, you are going to get negative reactions. Being awake, being seen to be awake can be dangerous.
Yeah, I was just talking with someone about this. I feel like many people in our audience may relate to that, not only familially, but culturally, in some in pretty intense ways. So we see you, we get it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the case, but in my case, literally, they are literally supporting me, not in a way that people think, but my brother pushes me to be awake. He's like, you're the lucky one in our family who's awake. Just don't. And anytime I try to sleep with them and be cool with them, they're like, don't bother, just continue being awake. So that's what I'm saying. Like,
That's
they're
nice.
not awake, but they support me.
Good. I'm
Good.
glad. I'm
And
glad.
Frank has been waiting patiently.
Yes.
So let's see what he has to say.
Hello, everybody. Well, I had two things I wanted to say from what I remember about feeding the moon, as far as what my considerations are on it. I like to consider myself a satellite of the sun and not a satellite of the earth. I consider the moon a satellite of the earth, and I figure that the ray of creation needs me tapping into it directly. So I try to focus on that ability. Maybe that's the way I look at trying to connect with the absolute, just in my way of thinking about it. I believe that all my mechanicalness does feed the moon in that sense. Otherwise, I think I need to be awake and doing something that benefits my family, my responsibilities, my brethren, my fellows, those types of things. I found that if I don't do that and I start drifting in my thoughts, that I I can be in trouble. But I come from a lot of trauma, and this program has helped me in the sense that it gives me something to think about and something to put my attentions on. This this thing I like what was just said about well, I guess I've said enough actually. So I just I am encouraged to find out what you think about that being a satellite of the sun as opposed to the satellite of the earth.
Sounds good to me. There is no reason why you can't make that shift. I mean, we're sitting here in the world of 48 laws, but we can participate in this at the world of 24 laws. And the more awakened you are, the easier it is to do that. And it sounds like that's what you're talking about, that you're working to participate in the universe at a more refined level. More power to you.
Yep.
I would say more being optimistic that I can achieve levels that I'm certainly not at now. And that maintains a positive direction, a hope or an expectation, maybe not so much an expectation, but certainly a hope.
In
And
anticipation, yeah, I hear
yeah,
you.
and so if not, it's very hard to do this work all of the time because
Yeah.
as I listen to what has been shared thus far, I see my solution is to be objective, to be as objective as I can, but my subjectivity just beats the hell out of me, especially when I get around the people that I know that have endured as I have. And I know they've endured much, much more. And when they try to communicate with me, they're not necessarily communicating from their message. They're communicating from their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard to not let that trauma that I hear resonate from them set with me. I'm not the reason for their trauma. I may have asked questions that may have brought to light things that are uncomfortable, but with what I'm doing, I feel that the path is much easier when we see doors that haven't been opened that we may need to open. And I've learned that through the nine-sided circle. And it's a matter of not being fearful anymore. It's a matter of seeing what's on the other side and appreciating it for what it is. And as Mushtaq says, if the shit doesn't work, don't continue to do it. Do the stuff that works,
Yes.
Amen to that.
So thank you for letting me share.
Yeah. Thank you
There
for
was
sharing.
somebody else that had their hand up.
Well, Alka had her hand up and someone else as well. Was there someone else as well?
Maybe. Or not. We have one more thing to talk about.
Yeah, so Alka is appreciating what you're saying, Frank, and as we all do, but she's expressing it in the chat. If it's okay, Mushtaq, can I read some of what's in the
Yeah,
chat?
go for it.
All right, so Mustaqim. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Kim said something.
RM was saying, rectifying my intention helps me during times of incompatibility or even times of hazard. Yes. Our Sheikh used to say, hold on to the rope of Allah. And we can think of our intention, our aim, as that thing that we hold to, even when challenges are really, I'm going to say, kicking our ass and making it feel like, what is even the point? But we hold firm to that intention, to that aim. And it helps us keep going. Just as you're saying, Frank, aspiring to be a satellite of the absolute. So, Mr. Keem is saying, I was thinking about the law of entropy, that is, disorder, entropy, always increasing over time, that the universe is going through, so that we do not. Sorry, my chat box is pesky sometimes. So that if we do not work on ourselves, it seems we will become more sedimented. And Ian responded to that by saying it's a bit more complicated than that, at least in terms of the law of entropy, right? Entropy increases in closed systems, but in open systems, that is
Thank you,
not
Ian.
necessarily the case.
Yes, that would have been my reply too. What
And I
this,
understand, Mr. Kim, why this
yeah,
brings the law of entropy to mind.
yeah. And it's true. And we can live in a closed system or an open system.
Yeah, we've talked about that
We
sometime
have talked about that. This is
long
the whole
ago.
idea of being able to move up
Open.
and down the ray of creation, as it were, moving through the levels of the nafs. Um, if we choose to stay where we are, then we're in a closed system, and all of our energy uh, becomes sedimented. We get to the steady state. If we allow ourselves to participate in the reciprocal maintenance of the universe, then we create an open system for ourselves. And we can experience syntropy rather than entropy because things keep coming in. This is, of course, all metaphor.
Yep.
So thank you, Ian, for touching on that very important point when it comes to thermodynamics and such things.
Yes. So RM is tying back to what Cherie was saying about, and Mushtaq, you were saying as well, about how the people who are closest to us, who have known us the longest, who have watched all of our developmental phases, been part of those, we have all kinds of anchors in us that tie us to being asleep within the relationships that we have with those people. So RM is saying, would it be essentially, would it be helpful to have intentional creation of personas around those people? And
And the
my
answer is
answer,
yes.
yeah, yes. Intentional protective coloring, right? We
Yeah.
talked about this some weeks ago. We talked about the curation of a persona or multiple personas. And those allow us to move through spaces in a way that keeps us in connection with the people we love. It's not us, but it's also got that sense of it is the ego at work. It is the ego being utilized for the good.
Yeah. The difference is you don't identify with the persona,
Exactly. Yes.
which is sometimes hard when they're hitting your buttons really, really hard.
Right. Yes. And RM continues to say, if fear, anger, and anxiety can easily kick in around family members, which means a lot of work to do still, which means they are a mirror for me. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. You can treat your relationship in a way that is both loving and compassionate, and also a way of seeing for yourself where you're at by observing yourself. And in that way, our loved ones can serve as a mirror for us, which is also similar to what Alko was saying, too. And James has made a joke about God created World 48 to train the faithful.
Yes.
Yep.
Only fans of Dune will get that.
Though I sometimes, in terms of myths and metaphors, uh, feel there's a kind of a truth in that, like conditions for growth also assume conditions of resistance to growth.
Yep.
Um, so, and I'm just also comparing it with more morbid interpretations like 48 is, or we're on a prison planet. We're in the Black Iron prison. We're in, Gnostic exile into the shell, all that kind of stuff that can creep into the sort of morbid pseudo-Platonism or whatever.
Yeah. And the
Um,
funny thing is that we are. And at the same time, we're at this incredibly wonderful place where magic happens.
hmm.
That's the funny part about it. It's like, where do you tune in?
Yeah. Yeah. I was having a conversation with someone about this yesterday. And he's not really into this stuff, but he brought up that character in Star Wars who says something along the lines of like, I am one with the Force and the Force is with me, right? So even in the midst of chaos,
Hmm.
that connection is still strong.
I think it's a crucial context to hold it all in. Otherwise, you do collapse into a sort of a paranoid trip or a defeatist, deterministic kind of thing. So it's for me, it's not like there's one balancing the other. The magic is the context in which all the sedimentation is occurring
Yeah, or breaking up.
or breaking up. But even when it's occurring, it's still in that context. You
Yeah.
have to keep that context in mind. Otherwise, you just become defeatist, down, depressed, whatever. I'm simplifying it massively, I know, but
Yep. So
so for me, God creating 48 to train the faithful is kind of a racket in a way. So yeah.
there you go.
Now, there's one more thing we need to touch on.
Yes, please do. I'm just gonna like
Yeah, let Chris in. He lost his signal. I think he's driving down the road.
be safe, Chris. We love you.
So, in Beelzebub's Tales, he tells the story of the Organ Kundabuffer. Now, again, takes this as metaphor. Now, I know all of the Gurdjieffians are going to be highly upset about everything that we've said tonight, and hopefully we'll get a lot of really
Juicy
juicy comments telling us why we're wrong about everything. I love that part. Um, so, to paraphrase and synopsize, at one point, in order for the universe to be operating as it should, human beings had to have this organ installed in them that would keep them mechanical, basically, because they needed to be food for the moon.
Kind of like a holding pattern, right?
Yeah, more than that, it was like you don't get to evolve. You have to stay mechanical. You have to dump your life energy into this process. And then, after a while, the organ was removed. But the behaviors that the organ caused remained and were passed down. Again, take it as metaphor. What does that mean? Because this is the final secret of not being food for the moon. What does that mean? That,
What mean? Yeah, let's get precise.
yeah, that at one point we were literally stopped in our growth so that we could be cattle. And then we were let wild again. And this is a weird thing. And the cattle metaphor is more apt than you think. I was raised on a ranch and we worked cattle. And one of the ways that we increased the herd is catching mavericks. A maverick is a young bull, or yeah, a heifer as well, but mostly they were bulls. And we would go out into the brush and find them and run them down and rope them and bring them in and brand them and castrate them and then let them go again. The funny thing is these cattle are wild, but they retain the domesticated qualities of a cow.
Because they're feral, basically, right?
Even if they're feral, they still have the domesticated habits, which allows them to be caught and handled in such a way that they get to be food.
Yeah. So it's like you have this strategic placement of constraints.
Yeah.
And then that strategic placement of constraints ends. And yet the constraints continue because they've been internalized.
Yep. And that's the thing. We have internalized programs that keep us feeding the moon, according to this metaphor. And we maybe could be better off not doing that. But it requires, dare I say, rewilding?
That word does a lot of heavy lifting these days.
Yes, it does.
Yep. So, we will return to your question, RM. Todd says, we note that the domestication that worked so well on cattle is a millimeter deep, even on the most domesticated pigs. And then M says, is it childhood? She's putting that in quotes, so I'm imagining you mean non-adulthood. Is that?
Yeah, and that's actually the case. It's called neoteny.
Yes.
Neoteny is the retention of juvenile traits into adulthood.
Yeah,
which
and
is how you domesticate an animal.
And this is how we answer Todd's question, rhetorical, since I think Todd is on his game with stuff like this. He says, what do the pigs have that the cows don't?
Same thing as cats. Though probably not as deep as cats have it. Cats, interestingly enough, were not domesticated by humans. Cats domesticated themselves. They moved in on us. And they learned the ways to keep us happy, but it is incredibly easy for cats to go feral, to rewild themselves, to be wild felines. Pigs are more than a little like that. It's very easy for them to go feral, so their domestication didn't go that deep. I don't know much about pigs. I never raised them. We never had them on the ranch.
Yeah, if someone wants to chime in the comments
Yeah.
about that, that's cool. Maybe you got some insights. But
The only thing I know about pigs, and this is from feral hogs, is that they're way too damn smart.
One of the things about them is that, as with wolves, when even if you have pigs that you've raised with, and are officially domesticated, everything is always up for renegotiation.
Yeah.
What was that, Todd? Everything is always up for renegotiation.
Yeah. Like the feral pigs in Canada are terrifying.
Got it. Terrifying.
Yeah, same with Texas. Texas has got a real feral pig problem. We were just talking about this. Jill and I were chatting about this the other day.
Nice. Jill's nodding. Yeah. James says a pig tried to bite my balls off once.
They do that.
Fun, fun. All right. Safe
Chris,
drive,
take
Chris.
care. It's
Okay.
so good to see you again. We got to get together and talk sometime soon.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll drop you a line, and I'd love to do that. Thank you all so
You
much.
have my number, so feel free to call me. If I'm not working, I'll pick up.
Hi.
Okay.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
All right.
So good to see him.
It is nice to see him. Kiddos, keep you busy.
Yep.
All right. Alka says removal of organ. That means by becoming aware and careful observation, we can break mechanical patterns. We can become conscious and awake. Yeah, so the capacity is there. We are not shackled from being able to get there, as in this tale, this metaphor that Gurdjieff offered us.
Yeah. The idea was when the organ was there, we had no choice. We could not overcome it. Once the organ was removed, the pattern is still there, and we live it out even though we could overcome it. And again, like I said, this is metaphor.
And yet, it's a pretty illustrative one. Any other thoughts right now? People might like to bring into the conversation. Yes, James.
I've got well, I don't have it brings to mind another myth about the moon, derived from sort of post-Crowleyan pop Kabbalah, where, okay, so we're at the sphere of Earth, Malkuth, and we want to climb the middle pillar of the tree to get to at least the sun at Tifereth. But between us and that, there's the moon. And the moon is a barrier in one sense, in that it's the realm of illusion, witchcraft, uh, sleep, all these sort of lunar themes. But some really funky guys reckon that every time we work through that sphere, we not only get personal liberation, we're changing that sort of astral area of the human race. We're actually making a change, a debugging of it. It's a popular idea in, pick and mix occultism that I've heard more than once.
Yeah,
So a slightly different myth, but just thought I'd throw that in there.
but it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frank, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. Something about the dawning of the age of Aquarius comes to mind with what James was just talking about, with what we're going through right now. But this, regarding this thing about not feeding the moon, I'm really curious about your take on this. My take on it is that it requires self-remembering and having a magnetic center and not becoming a judge of everything. And if that is similar to what your beliefs are, because I've got this basically from the nine-sided circle and outside studies,
Yeah, there's nothing I can
then
disagree with so far.
then that reciprocal maintenance that you're talking about, it's not necessarily reciprocal then, is it? Doesn't it go directly towards my growth and my
Well, remember,
achievement of consciousness?
remember, in reciprocal maintenance, there is that which is feeding us,
Mm-hmm.
as well as
Sort
us
of like,
feeding something else.
yeah.
So uh, it is reciprocal in the sense that there is support for us. And most of the time we ignore that support.
I see.
Take it for granted.
Yeah, which is kind of sad.
Mhm.
Yep.
It
For
seems
sure.
that that may be where our focus should be. And in that we've lost
Yes.
sight of the absolute, we lose the true essence of what it really means to just exist. I mean, sure, life is complex, and we all have these identity crises. That's what I see everybody going through. I know that's what I went through so many times. And I know I also, just because I'm experienced in that level, let the machine turn me into a machine. And I don't want ever to have that happen to me again. And that machine now has become what I see everybody going through right now with what we're seeing politically, what we're all going through.
Right.
And when I look at over the last year, I've had an opportunity to reflect with the nine-sided circle and this walk through chaos, as I'm sure you'll recall.
Yeah.
And that certainly is what I'm witnessing. It's a walk through chaos. And I found that I'm not so chaotically filled with myself when I look towards the absolute. You can call it whatever you like. You could call it God the Beloved, or whatever you want to call it. You could call it a peaceful essence, a blending of something that is not here now that could be if I wanted it to be, whatever you want to call it. But if I keep looking at the negative, I'm going to be negative. I can't stop being that I look at. I can't let it hypnotize me. I have to drag my foot in some conscious reality of positive, of something that is good for me and my family and all of us. Because, man, we're all going down the shit chute with social media and all this stuff. It's time to turn this thing around. And last week, you said it, everybody has a piece of this. And I have to carry my load. I do it every day. I try every morning, every day, every time that I'm awake. You can call that obsessive if you like. But when I wasn't doing it, I was equally obsessive in a negative way.
Mm.
And that is something that I was mechanically driven to. Now the work has become to try to retain what the nine-sided circle has taught me. And these feelings, these experiences that I'm going through now because of this work. And, so I don't really, I think I've said too much already, but, that's just the way that I feel. It's a passionate topic.
Passionate, yes.
So thank you for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing your passion, Frank. And we don't get to spend a whole lot of time with you, so it's great. Thank you, thank you. I'm so glad that we can be a support to you in that. And you're doing good work yourself, as many among us are, but you have your own unique spin on that. And it's going to be wonderful to see how that unfolds. Thank you.
So, if you can think for a moment what it would be like if you could focus your attention on being receptive to the energy coming to you rather than just putting the energy out. That would change you a little bit. So, Noor, would you like to call on people to speak?
Well, we got a few things in the chat, and then I would love to call on people to speak.
Yeah, let's make people talk at us.
Yes, yes. Well, Alka's saying, that sense of being part of the cycle of reciprocal maintenance of the universe and everything. Alka's saying it's the third force. We're blind to it.
Yes, she's
Or
absolutely right.
we're aware of it. Sometimes it's realizing that it's there is a matter of being awake to it. Yeah. And RM was saying balance came into my mind, the word balance. Yep. And RM says, Frank, thanks for sharing. I want to make sure you hear that too. All right, yes. RM says, when receiving energy feels like healing and draining energy feels like disease with different symptoms. Okay, when receiving, energy feels like healing, and draining energy feels like disease with different symptoms. Yeah,
That's not inaccurate. Yeah.
Mhm. I think that's fair to say. James says, I have my own notion of what being sensitive to incoming quote unquote energy looks like. The inspiring quote unquote vividness of perception. Now, Frank, do you still have your hand up actively, or is that from before?
I'm going through it here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I had it up from earlier.
Okay.
No problem.
Ian.
Oops.
You there, Ian?
Oops, sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, I was thinking that about this idea of being aware of things coming in to help us from outside. I would say that my experiences of grace are a very good example of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
More than just help us. It's the idea of there is that which can nourish us.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. Hmm. We have Annette in the chat. Annette says, energy directed to the present moment as opposed to scattered out into the universe with lots of expectation of others or the universe. Maybe that means a chance of moving up the levels as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is. It becomes harder and harder the more sedimented you are, but it's as long as there's time left for you, you've got an opportunity to do something with that time. James says, nourish, as in eating perceptions, really absorbing, really noticing, really feeling.
Yes.
I have had my own brief experiences of feeling nourished, uplifted, inspired by everyday commonplace perception. Totally mundane, normal circumstances, almost glowing. Not literally, but nothing special happening, nothing paranormal. God didn't speak to me or anything like that. But just the so-called mundane became fascinating, inspiring.
Sounds good. Yeah, that feeling of glowing, that feeling of connection, of
All that.
immersion, all of that. Yeah. Yes, Frank.
I have a suggestion that was given to me years ago by this little channel that only had just a couple of hundred subscribers. And I think it was called Nine-Sided Circle. Yeah, that's what it was. And this guy, his name was Mushtaq Ali. Yeah, I was like, boy, where do you get that name? And he told me how to do it. I'll be happy to share it with you if I can remember what he said. As I recall, he said, imagine a feather over the top of a well. And I'll add a little bit because I added my own fluff. And I imagine a cool breeze coming from the well, just out of the darkness, but it's not really dark. It's an ambient light. And I'm a feather and I just release myself and I float down that well. And that's it. That's all. And then whatever thought comes into my head, or if I want to pray, I pray from that stance. Or whatever thought comes into my head, I figure that's something coming in, some conscious reality that I should examine. And that's really it. And if I could do that walking down the street, well, there's a way you could do it.
Yeah.
There's in that same class, there's these precepts. There's 9 of them. And if you start with number 1, by the time you get to number 9, you almost feel like a feather. So anyway, that's the way I recall, but that was a long time ago.
I
Wow.
don't know, Frank, that sounds pretty far-fetched to me.
Those precepts are wonderful for everybody if you're really wanting to do this. The precepts are wonderful.
Yep, we have that playlist for those who are interested. And thank you for being such a great hype man, Frank.
The truth is the truth.
Mashallah. I'm feeling religious today. Don't mind me. Thank you for that, Frank. Yes. All right, RM asks, moving up in level means I am acting from divine will versus mechanical self. Essentially, yes. I mean, you're moving in a way that brings your essence to the fore, that has empowered your essence. Whereas the mechanical self, as we know, that's the equivalent of the ego, the nafs, that moves you down a level in this metaphor that we're using here. And of course, we all have moments of every day where we live up to our higher aims in moments where we kind of don't, simply put, and we all have those. But it's the aggregate. Are you mostly living up to, are you mostly aspiring? I love how Frank you put it, we're working towards being satellites of the absolute. We may not live up to that at every moment, but we aspire to it. This is not about purity here. All right, who haven't we heard from? Emina, can I touch base with you? What are you thinking about?
I'm just really enjoying today's sohbet, today's discussion. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Em. Hmm.
Amelia has been very quiet.
I love the color of the area behind you, Amelia.
Oh yeah, it's a nice little booth. Yeah. For me, the way I always think about it is that when you're when you're doing it right, you're kind of thinking that you like have your own plan for what should happen, and you're not like adamant that it must occur the way you planned, and you kind of surrender a little bit where there's probably a better plan that you don't know about and probably won't understand until it's done. And that's like what the universe is conspiring for you.
Yes, I like that. Yeah. This idea of, our highest good, right? And how that shows up in the world in the bigger scheme of things. Yeah. Thank you for that, Amelia. Mm, Jill, do you have any thoughts you might like to share?
Well, it's making me think about a phrase we use about hoeing rows and getting stuck in the row. It take more energy to figure out how to get out of the row without damaging the row or the potential created there. Especially if wild pigs come by and you need to go deal with them.
The
It's all in the
domesticated ones can
moment.
be pretty nasty too. Take my word for it.
Yeah, I had an uncle who dealt with them, but my only firsthand experience was with the wild ones. Yeah, so I'm still processing all of that.
All good. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Am I missing anyone? Mr. Takeem, do you have anything you want to share aloud? Are you good? Okay. All right. Annette, how about you? You got any thoughts you might like to share?
I guess the things that mainly resonated with me were around kind of just being present and being aware of your own energy moment by moment. And then hopefully not being as reactive. And I think what I'd heard before is like coming back to your aim and remembering that nothing comes from expressing negative emotion. So even if you can sit in whatever you're sitting in, whatever energy you're sitting in, that it's less going back into the universe.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Annette. Yeah, just to reassure you all, there is room for feeling unhappy things. This is not about stuffing those things down and pretending they don't exist. When they come up, all you do is witness them. That's your responsibility there, to witness them. not to shut them down and pretend that they're not there, or to shun that part of yourself that feels those things, because it's part of being human. This is a holistic experience. But if we have the wherewithal to observe, then sometimes we can mitigate the damage that happens when we act out those negative emotions. So I hope people understand that there is nuance there. And it's important because there are some places and spaces where those things are not welcome. And it becomes very toxic for us to not be able to experience the full range of happiness all the way to despair and everything in between, anger, anxiety, fear. Those things have educational pieces to them. They exist for a reason. It's just that we don't want to be run into the ground by them.
And James has a thought, and that's going to wrap it up for tonight.
All right.
Well, I was just thinking about anger and setting boundaries. And in my mind, essence is a thing that has to be cultivated, nurtured, grown, and protected in certain specific interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, this is why I don't like the New Age much. So-called negative anger may be, if it is accompanied by
Anger
conscious.
is not a negative emotion.
Exactly. Sometimes it's a necessity.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a setting of a boundary to
Yes.
keep the alchemical vessel intact.
Yeah. And you bring up an excellent point. There's a difference between reacting and responding. A feeling
Yeah.
comes up. Okay, now instead of just going, I'm gonna choose, okay, feeling exists. Is it boundary being violated? Okay, I need to take action on that. I need
Yeah.
to take respectful to myself
Mm.
and to the world around me, respectful action on that. Not okay.
Mm.
All right. So we're on Brady Bunch mode now.
All right. Thanks for hanging in there. Let's all try not to be a buffet meal for the moon. Lots of diversity, lots of flavors. But good job, everyone. Thank you. All right. So we can hang
Folks.
out next week, inshallah. We can wave to each other, wave to everyone watching on the replay, and we'll talk to you soon.
And